Hey, if you haven't heard, new Caucasian drop. Caucasian reveal, veal. Actually, 2 did. Double Caucasian reveal, veal. One of them taking over Tumblr spaces everywhere. The other serving as background noise for 20-year-old house parties with the combined presence of a grandma and 3 vapes. Britney is bumping that, they're saying. Sorry for dissing. I love these 2 girlies. I'm a girl's girl, you know? I see a girl, I love a girl. And I mean, I could never not love a girl. But these 2 superstars, phenomenal moms, have gotten to a little bit of controversy. Now, I don't know if you know, but there's kind of an election going on. It's very serious times, I'm telling you. Someone almost got like shot on TV. It was wild. Yeah, that happened like a month ago, not that long ago. A lot's at stake and the country's in a pandemic, a clandemic, mandemic, revive, takeoff, bandemic. It's not good at all right now. It's not good. Leading for the spectacle of public approval to teeter with electoral standing, especially for celebrities. I mean, Taylor Swift has been dragged by Trump of all people after stating, "I will be casting my vote for Kamala Harris and Tim Walz in the 2024 presidential election," Swift said in a post on Instagram to her more than 283 million followers. "I'm voting for Kamala Harris because she fights for the rights and causes I believe need a warrior to champion them. I think she is steady-handed, and I believe we can accomplish so much more in this country if we are led by calm and not chaos." Swift went on to say that she was heartened and impressed by Harris's selection of Minnesota Governor Tim Walz as her running mate, praising him as a champion of LGBTQ+ rights, IVF, and a woman's right to own her own body for decades. "I've done my research and I made my choice," the Grammy-winning artist added. "Your research is all yours to do, and the choice is yours to make. I also want to say, especially to first-time voters, remember that in order to vote, you have to be registered. I also find it much easier to vote early. I'll link where to register and find early voting dates and info in my story." Now, don't get me wrong. I'm not one of these centrist boys. If I see a mega hat, I know I'm Tom Holland. Far away from home. But we can't overlook the fact that during the run of liberal governance in North America, being both in Canada and America, LGBTQ+ rights are still being threatened, and genocide kind of continually occurs. Yeah, I know what you're thinking, the one side is better argument. How about I get a screwdriver and then we go to a Headley concert, and then we'll go to Build-A-Bear, and then I know the argument, okay? But we're actively living under a liberal governance right now, are we not? And I don't like it that much, so is it really that bad to critique? Can I be a critiquer? Can I be a critiquer? Can I be a critique? We'll critique. So, Charlie XCX, Chapel Roan, Taylor Swift. What do these artists have in common, you may ask? Mayo matriarchy lineage. Oh yeah. And their audiences being somewhat the same. This creates an interesting conversation with the types of spectacles they garnish. Tirrrb! What do you mean by spectacle? That's a weird word. Spectacle. Well, the spectacle of destructive art. See, destructive art is something that Charlie and Chapel Roan make in a way. Charlie literally laments on her experiences, snorting lines in a club. Granted, real as hell, but not exactly PG, cookie cutter, Make America Great Again, trad wife music, cottagecore music type beat, like Taylor Swift does. Even though all 3 of these artists have endorsed Kamala Harris directly, Taylor Swift was the only one that caught backlash from right-wing parties, while white artists like Charlie XCX and Billie Eilish haven't. So why Taylor Swift? Well, it's cause she's white America's sweetheart, and not by choice. Trump on his website Truth Social tweeted out, "I hate Taylor Swift," and yes, I'm still calling them tweets. Funnily enough though, his supporters had the exact opposite reaction to what he wanted. Oh boy, this one isn't gonna help much. Couldn't we just ignore her and move on? Damn Trump, nobody want you. I'm your biggest supporter, but what does this help? All this does is give these idiots something to talk about besides policies. Taylor Swift is fucking irrelevant. Stick to policies. Stop going down to their level. Trump, they jumping you on your own website. Trump, they jumping you on your own website. Trump, we might have to do a Truth Socials part 2 and put everyone at a kindergarten reading level on that website just so it's a little bit more effective. Don't worry, I can PR too. I can be your PR. Why would you post this? I'm a supporter, but I find it disturbing. You will lose both independents and women's votes because of this. This is really bad. Trump, they're dragging you by your wig. Taylor Swift herself isn't political, but Taylor Swift, that's political. What artists represent to their demographics become building blocks for their success and cultural relevance. Swift came up in the Nashville scene, From the age of 14, as a country singer-songwriter inspired by the likes of Dolly Parton and Shania Twain, her debut single, Tim McGraw, alluded to her love of another country legend, and her early hits climbed the genre's charts along with heartland tunes full of cowboy twang and pickup trucks. Taylor Swift's music and demographics are disproportionately white, and because of this, she's been the target of multiple right-wing campaigns aiming to claim her. The ascendant alt-right posters by Nature saw a chance to disingenuously claim Taylor Swift as their own, as both a secret Trump supporter and neo-Nazi. It didn't seem to matter that she had previously expressed her happiness Barack Obama taking the White House in 2008.
I don't care if they write that.
Damn Trump, nobody want you.
I'm sad that I didn't 2 years ago, but I can't change that. I'm saying right now that this is something that I know is right, and you guys, I need to be on the right side of history. It really is a big deal. She votes against fair pay for women. She votes against the reauthorization of the Violence Against Women Act, which is just basically protecting us from domestic abuse and stalking. She thinks that if you're a gay couple, or even if you look like a gay couple, you should be allowed to be kicked out of a restaurant. It's really basic human rights, and it's right and wrong at this point, and I can't see another commercial and see her disguising these policies behind the words Tennessee Christian values. Those aren't Tennessee Christian values. I live in Tennessee. I am Christian. That's not what we stand for. I need to do this. I need you to forgive me for doing it, because I'm doing it.
The attempt to rebrand her older, murky origins, including 4chan in-jokes and a Pinterest user who in 2013 went viral for images falsely attributing Hitler quotes to Swift, but picked up steam as Trump did. Andrew Anglin, founder of the white supremacist website The Daily Stormer, declared her an Aryan goddess, while Milan Yiannopoulos, in a column for Breitbart, explained why she was an alt-right pop icon, noting her whiteness, blondness, unrevealing clothes, lack of piercings, and occasional mini-scandals over music videos accused of racial undertones. It probably didn't help that Swift endorsed neither Hillary Clinton nor Trump, leaving room for misinformation about how she secretly voted for the GOP candidate. Following Trump's victory, some Democrats vented their frustration at Swift's silence during the campaign, believing she could have moved the needle for Clinton. Taylor Swift being a popular white woman with a platform doesn't come without its framing. I'm sure we all see her as that white country girl that makes a little occasional bop from time to time. You know, the players want to play that good old Hannah Montana party in the USA white girl stuff activity. And others see her as the satanic spawn of neoliberal white sorority feminism, and I wouldn't disagree. Either way, in a public eye, artists are more political now more than ever. A phenomenon happening in real time. We're seeing kick streamers like Aiden Ross stream with Trump, and Twitch streamers like Speed traveling abroad and becoming a reflection of black culture the world relays its ideations on. So in Charlie XCX and Chappell Roan's cases, how do we handle plausible criticism of liberal policies? Because notably so, these two artists became faces for their target demographics. Chappell Roan in queer spaces, and Charlie in white sorority girl / NB / gay best friend subgenre. Artists have always reflected a social undertone of their time. Art is not separate from its modern connotations. What is disruptive to the social fabric of normalcy is entirely subjective to the artists and genres they embody. Although Lady Gaga is a cis woman, she's embraced by the queer community, partially because of her remarks on queer stances and her continual allyship throughout her career.
Lady Gaga is opening up about why she's never addressed rumors that swirled earlier in her career that she's a man. During an appearance on Netflix's What's Next? The Future with Bill Gates, I feel like a victim with that lie, and I thought, what about a kid who's being accused of that, who would think that a public figure like me would feel shame? The performer, who once leaned into the rumors for her performances, creating a cigarette-smoking rock star named Joe Calderone in 2011, tells Bill, quote, "I've been in situations where fixing a rumor was not in the best interest of the well-being of other people."
Rap, a black disruptive form of art, which portrays black experiences, when it began was so anti-establishment, they were hiding it from public stores, radios, and kids, especially white people. But nowadays you'll have Republicans like Trump utilizing black culture through tokens of representation. Granted, both parties pander in different ways. The Democrats did this too, with Megan Thee Stallion on Kamala Harris's stage. But the Democratic strategy is usually, I'm going to pretend to see those people with melanin over there come election. But have we forgotten how to treat people like human beings with like ideations of their own? Like... Now, this pandemonium started on Twitter when Pop Flop HQ posted statements made by Chappell Roan on why she hasn't endorsed Kamala Harris. I have so many issues with our government in every way. There are so many things that I would want to change, so I don't feel pressured to endorse someone. There's problems on both sides. The both sides argument. A debate which has ravished the social ethos of familiarity ever since Abraham Lincoln decided black men have the best teeth and took them for himself. I know one side is literally school shooters and white boys with break-in fantasies and Candace Owens for some reason. But to say liberals aren't complicit in the same issues would be a gross misunderstanding. Incorrect factually and spiritually. Like, haven't we all been watching the same videos and seeing the same headlines since October and going outside and seeing the same protests every day? But normativity be how normativity be. And public opinion decided to run with the Chappell Roan isn't supporting the right side narrative. Chappell Roan's ability to be an incredibly refreshing voice of reason one moment, and then the most annoying, ignorant, humorless weirdo the next moment should really be studied. Since when was it unreasonable to be like, you know, like genocide bad? We are really witnessing the rise and fall of a Midwest princess, aren't we? Chappell Roan is from this area of the US, so she's a darling of the homegrown stature, you could say. In this way, a lot of these quote tweets just come for her identity. How are you queer and an ardent defender of the drag community, and somehow a both sides are bad person? See, the Democratic Party has somehow managed to become the moral bastion of communal thought in the queer community. Whenever election season comes, the sleeper agent just clicks, and all of a sudden it's we can community build. Have you ever community built, fam? Have you ever? I haven't seen you protest. My question, however, is when has the government ever been an active resource that queer people can rely on for liberation? For you to have your first guy kiss, didn't we have to like stone a wall or something? Chappell Roan is unfortunately misheard in her stance. I understand y'all Democrats. I understand y'all. And I'm gonna let y'all have your moment, okay? Because this is actually one of the most critical times to fight for queer rights specifically. The next critical time was yesterday. These bills are going through the Senate at an alarming rate. We're experiencing one of the biggest worldwide hate campaigns on trans identities. Reading headline after headline of dead trans kid after dead trans kid. And this is all being fueled by the same political narratives that are winning conservatives' votes. Politicians run off fear-mongering campaigns, painting trans and queer people as pedophiles and super predators. Rightfully so, a lot of the queer community is in arms against Republicans taking their rights away.
U.S. Senator J.D. Vance has introduced legislation that would federally ban gender-affirming care for minors. He's named it the Protect Children's Innocence Act. And if it were to pass, doctors who perform gender reassignment procedures on a minor could face criminal charges.
And let me stress that this problem is global. In Poland, for example, President Andrzej Duda won a narrow victory in the 2020 election by embracing homophobic politics to distract from waning economic growth and claims of executive overreach by his PiS party.
The banks of the Vistula River are the place to be for Warsaw's youth in summer. Campaigners for Rafał Trzaskowski are also here, hoping the new generation will put the brakes on Poland's conservative nationalist government.
I simply feel ashamed when I talk with foreign friends about what's happening today in this country, with the political takeover of the courts and the breaches of the constitution.
Like 22% of under-30s, Maria and Mateusz supported independent candidate Szymon Hołownia in the first round. They also see Duda as an embarrassment.
If we care about Poland's image, the way Andrzej Duda has criticized the LGBT community, that is something we simply can't allow to continue for another 5 years. His opponent, Warsaw Mayor Rafał Trzaskowski, had signed a non-binding declaration in support of sexual and gender minorities. In response, Duda amplified the threat they posed as a rainbow plague and an ideology worse than communism. Do you see the parallels with America? Or is that just me? In some countries, anti-LGBTQ rhetoric is increasingly part of a right-wing strategy that weaponizes fear and stigma against sexual and gender minorities to align with the values of religious conservative voters needed to win elections. But the both sides are bad argument takes away from the nuanced harm that Democrats are doing currently to society and community building projects on the ground right now. See, the assault on queer identity is very much global, and in the age of the internet, with how connected we are, these same global issues are now centerfold more than ever. We can't reduce the cause of anti-queer or genocidal approaches our government take to a matter of a difference of a vote after a record number of anti-LGBTQ legislation was passed passed in Canada and the United States last year, while our presidents like Justin Trudeau pander to queer community by queer baiting support rather than fighting to counter these bills being passed. What these tweets and normative responses are missing is Chappell Roan's core intentions. Now, if you don't know her, Chappell Roan is a queer artist that blew up this summer for good reason. After a name-making performance at her Coachella debut, a surprisingly viral visit to NPR's Tiny Desk, and the meteoric surge in popularity of her debut album, Chappell Roan has become an undeniable force in the music industry. She is heavily inspired by drag and identifies as a drag performer. And she's also a big gamer who loves The Sims and Fortnite. She's also thankfully never been a Zionist. What Chappell Roan was fighting for was the freedom of Palestine. We want liberty, freedom, and justice for all, Roan said during her Governor's Ball performance Sunday.
I am in drag of the biggest queen of all. But in case you have forgotten what's etched on my pretty little toes, give me your tired, your poor, your huddled masses, yearning to breathe free. That means freedom and trans rights. That means freedom and women's rights. Especially means freedom for all people and oppressed. It especially means freedom for all oppressed people in occupied territories.
Pop singer Chappell Roan told a crowd of 150,000 people on Sunday that she turned down an invitation to perform at the White House's Pride festivities during a set where she spoke about trans rights, women's rights, and freedom for oppressed people in occupied territories. Yo, let's go. Yo, let's go. Yo, let's go. See, you know how to be an ally? You do some shit like that. Near the end of her set at New York City's Governor's Ball Music Festival, Roan stared into a camera at the side of the stage to say she would be singing the song My Kink is Karma from her album The Rise and Fall of a Midwest Princess, as a response to the White House, who asked me to perform for Pride. So apparently they just hated on her because she was real.
Endorsing and voting are completely different. I don't agree with a lot of what is going on with, like, policies. Like, obviously, fuck the policies of the right, but also fuck some of the policies on the left. That's why I can't endorse. That's why I can't, like, put my entire name and my entire project behind one. Because there is no way I can stand behind some of the left's completely transphobic and completely genocidal views. So yeah, there are huge problems on both. You know what is right and wrong, and so do I. Fuck Trump for fucking real, but fuck some of the shit that has gone down in the Democratic Party that has failed people like me and you. And more so, Palestine. And more so, every marginalized community in the world. So no, I'm not gonna settle for what the options that are in front of me. And you're not gonna make me feel bad for that. So yeah, I'm voting for fucking Kamala, but I'm not settling for what has been offered, because that's questionable. It's questionable that our actions of our government, the actions of the internet, the actions of you and me, if this is what you are not understanding.
That's all it really was. I can't. How can you ever hate a queen for being a queen? That's what queens are supposed to do. She's the Midwest princess, not the Midwest Zionist. So apparently they just hated on her because she was real. They just hated on her because she was standing on business. The more I learn about her, the more I love her. She even shouted out Saskatchewan. What y'all know about Saskatchewan? Nothing? Probably me neither. Me neither. But she shouted it out. And that's hella obscure, hella destroy lonely, hella niche, hella core even. Now, Chappell Roan doesn't differ much from a Charlie XCX in social demographic. Charlie XCX is an indie sleaze artist. Your friend who uses color correction on Visco definitely knows about. You might recognize her from the terrible voice in I'm so fat. We don't know what she was thinking there. Wasn't a serve. She bounced back though and released one of my favorite albums of the summer. Recently, she too got caught up in some drama for endorsing Kamala. Charlie XCX has reluctantly embraced her tweet declaring Kamala Harris's brat, becoming a phenomenon during this year's presidential election.
I saw that Charlie XCX posted, "Kamala is brat." Kamala's campaign was pretty excited about it, but there appeared to be some confusion over what that exactly means. Watch this.
The pop star seemingly endorsed Harris.
They're trying to suggest that Harris is a brat.
You take away the A. Kamala is brat.
It's not the brat, it's brat.
My wife was wondering what Kamala is brat means.
It's not that Kamala Harris is a brat, she is brat.
You're just that girl who is a little messy and likes to party and maybe says some dumb things sometimes.
In her New York Magazine cover story, the pop star was asked about the divisive social media statement about the vice president. She explained that she wrote it while relaxing in the pool at her Los Angeles home, not thinking much about it as a political endorsement, but rather something positive and lighthearted to welcome the new presidential nominee. However, the English singer's approval for Harris led to her album, Brat, which had already become part of the zeitgeist this summer with the music's no one cares attitude, viral star-studded remixes, and the eye-catching green cover art being co-opted by Harris's political campaign and turned into a meme. Now Harris's brat status was being discussed on CNN and Fox News. Even Bill Maher weighed in, saying that Harris being brat sounds like Trump. Never mind that while Charlie owns properties in the US, she's not an American citizen and cannot vote in this election. To be on the right side of democracy, the right side of women's rights, is hugely important to me, said Charlie about her support of Harris becoming a talking point during this election. I'm happy to help to prevent democracy from failing forever. Did I think me talking about being a and like partying and needing a Bic lighter and a pack of Marlboro Lights would end up on CNN? No, she admitted. Charlie clarified that while she wanted to share where she stands politically, she has no desire to be a political artist, noting, "I'm not Bob Dylan, and I never pretended to be." See, Charlie was at home chilling and sent out a joke tweet. I don't hate her for that. I have a million regrettable tweets, all revolving around Paul Dana. And don't ask me about Paul Dana. There has to be clarity here though, like let's be real. Having a platform, especially as an artist, is inherently political by way of public interaction. How artists react to everyday events can definitely be political. I'd in fact even argue that the aspect of the artist is political. I mean, there's a reason why Hollywood platforms so many white women and men while neglecting black women and men. Hollywood functions under a very backwards lens of diversity, which gives certain favorable marginalized artists in their genres positions while neglecting others. Queer and black artists are commonly used as diversity tokens at places like the White House with Glorilla's Run used by Kamala Harris. Specifically though, queer artists are used to represent vestiges of community. It's like connecting to the ancestors when you get creative. It's like Deku All Might One for All type. It's also why whole cities come together to celebrate the lives of deceased rap stars. It's because of the metaphorical reflection of culture they represented for them. Artists themselves become their art when they release it to the people of the world, but they're also a reflection of culture in their subjective forms. Meaning, Kendrick Lamar can hit the green button in Cali, but Drake unfortunately colonized the city of Toronto, and that's why TDE can't come here. I'm not saying everything an artist does has to be good in political reasoning terms. I'm not saying all artists are inherently politically good, and I'm not saying all of my artists are inherently good either, because I love awful art too. One of my favorite depictions of satire is The Boondocks. The secondary character is a raging homophobic 7-year-old, and one of my favorite depictions of culture calls white people massa. I don't hate creators for depicting an accurate reality of experiences faced in the black community, just like I don't hate Charlie XCX for moving with the naivety of a 2007 Delta Kappa frat girl. Like I expect it, right? That's just her. That's her niche. The music's still good though. But platforms and the people who hold them are one of the most valuable forms of power in the attention economy. Meaning speaking up for your rights is very much canon in transformative lore when normativity deems we should just shut up. A lot of celebrities are silent in the midst of political unrest for fear of creating online disturbance in the interwebs because of groups in popular media who combat warranted criticism for Israel. More than 150 entertainment industry leaders signed an open letter released by the nonprofit organization Creative Community for Peace, urging the National Academy of Television Arts and Sciences to rescind the Emmy nomination of Basan for the 2024 News and Documentary category. The letter, which comes in response to Oda's nomination for the documentary It's Basan from Gaza and I'm Still Alive, calls on NATAS to rescind the nominations due to Oda's documented ties to the Popular Front for the Liberation of Palestine, a United States designated terrorist organization. The letter expresses deep concern that honoring an individual who has actively participated in FLP rallies and disseminated anti-Semitic content legitimizes a terrorist organization and undermines the integrity of the Emmys. Co-founder and chairman of the CCFP, David Renzer, said, NATAS must decide they can either condone the murder of innocent civilians or they can listen to the entertainment community and stand in opposition to hatred and violence. CCFP Executive Director Ari Engel said, the Emmys' decision to honor someone with clear ties to a US designated terrorist group is inexcusable and should have never happened would be legitimizing a terrorist organization. If the Emmys don't change course and rescind this nomination, they will be glorifying someone who is a member of an organization that has carried out numerous aircraft hijackings, participated in the October 7 massacre in Israel, carried out waves of bombings on markets and restaurants, and murdered innocent women and children. The Emmys cannot allow their prestigious award to be hijacked by terrorists, and instead should continue to promote peace and tolerance through the arts. The letter states that the nomination is in direct violation of the NATAS Code of Ethical Conduct, which explicitly states a zero tolerance for discrimination, harassment, illegal, dishonest, unethical, or otherwise harmful conduct. Now that the tables are set up, welcome to my trap card. What the fuck is queer content? What is queer content? Industry stars are supported by economic infrastructure and the global appeal of Hollywood, which rests in a societal normativity that oppresses people by default. So if you're only meant to inhabit this tiny little box and just be a good little queer person, what change are you bringing for the conditions around you? On top of that, when we reference queer creatives, we're only referencing like a handful of people in like really select groups of spaces. Most of the time, these artists are handpicked too. The lesbian scenes may be acted out by cis women who appeal to a male gaze, and even gay content centers a very, very white norm. These popular stereotypes implemented in Hollywood affects how queer representation is handled. In recent years, the inclusion of LGBTQ put onto other aspects such as individuals or relationships surrounding them. Kaval identifies 3 areas that motivate anxious displacement in network TV shows: popular gay rights discourse as a political force, the transformative quality of media as a textual force, and producers and showrunners as an industrial force. Queer media and representation has long been demonized in the public sense. You'll find YouTube being littered with video after video of some woke iteration of a Disney show. And 40-year-olds, let me tell you this right now. The force is not something that police officers use on black people. That's not what the force is supposed to be. It's supposed to be like this cool electric thing. But in this way, queer art has been historically demonized, and it currently still is. To be a queer artist is to be framed in the stereotypical description of social normalcy. In this way, queer people are forced to find and imagine new worlds more subjectively experienced in everyday life. In essence, queer art was never supposed to be commodified. It was supposed to be a communal reflective experience of life, with all its joys, sorrows, victories, and failures, solidifying figures as bastions of queer identity, then forcing them to be complicit with structural normalcy is backwards. What we're doing to Chapel Roan on the liberal side is the same thing that the conservatives are doing. We're just doing it very nice. We're giving her a nice little box and being like, okay, if you just support the Democrats, we will cheer. And we will be your fans. What if she wants to create an actual change in this world? What if she wants to stand on business? What if she wants to free Palestine? Part of imagining new worlds for queer people means redefining the boxes which queerness is already defined in, because reflections of love and the self don't look the same for all of us. Queer also signifies the deconstruction of identity, proposing that its very notion relies on bounded coherence that imposes exclusions and limitations on subjectivity. We honor figures like James Baldwin now, with dignity, but forget he was a product of his environment. If you don't know who they are, James Baldwin was the civil rights activist and a major historical pillar of queer art. My personal favorite queer author, just under Ro Ramden on Twitter. She cooks sometimes. James Baldwin was born in Harlem Hospital in New York City in 1903. He wrote many plays, essays, poems, and novels, which feature interesting characters who juggle with the idea of love.
I'm terrified at the moral apathy, the death of the heart, which is happening in my country. These people have deluded themselves for so long that they really don't think I'm human. I base this on their conduct, not on what they say. And this means that they have become, in themselves, moral monsters.
During his time, Baldwin faced a considerable amount of social hardship. Being both black and gay was like living life in Elden Ring in 1903, you can imagine. What strikes me as inspiring was the lengths James Baldwin would go to for his own rights.
And there are days, this is one of them, when you wonder what your role is in this country and what your future is in it. How precisely you're going to reconcile yourself to your situation here, and how you're going to communicate to the vast, heedless, unthinking, cruel white majority that you are here.
Quote, James Baldwin was a powerful voice in the modern civil rights movement. As a journalist, he reported on significant historical events, particularly in the South, and he attended major marches, including the 1963 March on Washington and the 1965 Selma to Montgomery March. Whenever he was called upon to do so, he lent his presence and his voice at various types of legal proceedings. Equally as significant, he met with lawmakers at the highest levels of United States government to help eradicate racial segregation and violence. In the spring of 1963, an unprecedented meeting occurred between Attorney General Robert F. Kennedy and a collective of black writers and thinkers, led by James Baldwin, who was dismayed by the government's lack of intervention into civil and human rights violations in the South. That season saw a rise in violence, policy brutality, and mass incarcerations of demonstrators in the rights campaign unfolding in Birmingham, Alabama. On May 12, he sent a telegraph to Attorney General Kennedy, blaming the Kennedy administration for the violence unfolding in the Deep South, and arguing that it was the political establishment which made possible the violence of Birmingham Sheriff Theophilus Bull Connor. Baldwin argued that the nation was in crisis and that Kennedy's inaction was paramount to moral treason to the American people. But as much as I adore queer figures like James Baldwin who embrace and fight for community and even idolize them in the way, going out to protest, fighting for my rights, and trying to make a change in my own little subjective blacky way, you know what I'm saying? But I think there's merit in queer artists who don't fit the mold of the savior, because the truth is artists are great reflections of life, identity, and powerful tools of perception, of familiarity for the marginalized communities they're applicable to. But there are ugly parts of representation, as there are ugly parts of marginalized experience. If social order dictates that queer identities or marginalized identities are susceptible to harsher conditions, wouldn't it make sense that this trauma would be portrayed in queer art? My favorite representation is Frieza and Azealia Banks. Now let me tell you why that's awful before they do. Azealia Banks is a widely queer-phobic, every type of ism embodier you could think of, but there is an aspect of self she reflects which makes sense. Being born in the same New York City, granted in slightly different time frames from James Baldwin, Azealia Banks had to encounter a lot of the same bigotry Baldwin did, and on different accounts considering she was a black woman making hip-hop house rap. Similarly to Baldwin, her household was also a torrent of putridity. She describes her father as a lot of really mean things. Granted, he got with her mother when she was 14 and was deeply traumatized after his passing. After my dad died, my mom became really abusive, physically and verbally. Like she would hit me and my sisters with baseball bats, bang our heads up against the walls, and she would always tell me I was ugly. I remember once she threw out all the food in the fridge just so we wouldn't have anything to eat. Although Azealia Banks is a person I'd never want to be seen with, I can resonate with the trauma of self-ideation revolving around abuse. The thing about communal experiences of toxicity is that they exist. Art is a pathway of creative escape in the life of artists. Reflections of flawed pictures of love are relatable because of this. In Licorice by Azealia Banks, she talks about stumbling around New York with a man, excited. Now me, I'm from a small town. You can imagine being in a big city like Vancouver, for me, for the first time, was invigorating. The sounds, the bustle, the art, the sheer size of everything. Running around in the city, you could get lost. And nothing is more beautiful than being lost with someone you love. Vancouver, as I'm sure New York's community did for Azealia Banks, taught me the experience of joy. Communal joy. Seeing your friends try something you shouldn't. Still partying, fighting, loving, vying for a change. Seeking love in the faces of new strangers every night. The excitement of life, sadly, can be channeled by horrible artists with relatable backdrops. Marginalized art is a reflection of community, and that's why it's beautiful. But in the sense of my old community, that's why I understand it can also be ugly. We can understand the duality of art in tandem with the duality of life, in accordance with its popular figures. I love when they stand up for something real, which is why I applaud Chappell Roan for bringing a voice to a cause she didn't even really need to, especially when the liberal backdrop of fame makes it impossible for meaningful conversations to be had. She's spearheading criticism in a way that a lot of queer artists historically have. But when I think of queer change, I think of people like James Baldwin and how he went through the same experiences with creating a queer world and not being able to do it. So he went to Paris. In the same way a lot of marginalized kids detest the racism or homophobic hatred which plagued their hometowns and up and leave.
The best thing I ever did in my life, I think, was in effect flee America and go to Paris in 1948. And it gave me time to vomit up a great deal of bitterness. At least I could operate in Paris without being menaced socially No one cared what I did.
Chappell Roan giving a voice to Palestine is cool as fuck, okay? But does queer have an asterisk when we consider broader issues? After all, the liberal government of Joe Biden's America executed, lynched a man the other day. The other day, another one was the target of a violent knife attack centered at etching the N-word into a black person's chest. So when I think about community, I can't help but imagine a new world. I cannot be in this world. The one we're living in is so putrid that 1.25 million signatures couldn't save one man from a racist system of disenfranchisement. I find it hard not to teeter into morbid and self-degrading practices in these times, but hope keeps me alive, you know? I'm alive, and I can imagine it's the very same patronizing experience of life and death and an internal dread in these times for y'all too. What Vancouver was to me was a world created out of a need for change. I'm not in Vancouver right now, not in my created world of hospitality, but there's hope, because I will be there again eventually and see all the things I created so beautifully. What Vancouver was to me was a world created out of a need for change. It's beautiful growing old and getting to see an actively shaped version of your reality. What that place gave me was a whole new perception of life that's pivotal in order to combat structural barriers preventing us from being ourselves in this world. So what Chappell Roan did was a big step for liberation, but artists won't always be on our sides. Chappell Roan won't be there to hold your hand as you traverse through your reality and try to find love as a marginalized person. Intersectionally, we have to actively shape our worlds in our daily lives to create better worlds for us to inhabit in the future. And sometimes that means listening to more than just Hollywood representation of queer or black art. We're going into a time where the president can be a black femme, but the oppressed are still violently shut down with the monolithic messaging of the Democratic Party. You're not weird for constantly questioning the individual experience of your marginalized identity, and you're not weird for fighting against it. Keep going. I see you. Remember to keep the sanctity of the Congo, Sudan, black rights, and the well-being of all in your created image of your world. Sometimes all we have is the creativity of potential. We have to try to preserve what they can't control. Our will to bend the world into a better path. Till next time, I'll see y'all.